Hi, everybody. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here. I want to introduce our panel for the film For They Know Not What They Do. We'll start off with the director, Dan Karslake. He is an award-winning American director and producer whose highly acclaimed work deals with social justice issues, both domestically and internationally. His current project, For We Know Not What We Do, premiered at the 2019 Tribeca Film Festival and is a follow-up to his award-winning feature For the Bible Tells Me So. The film is an exploration of the intersection between religion and homosexuality and how the religious right has used its interpretation of both the Holy Bible and the U.S. Constitution as a means to discriminate against LGBT Americans under the guise of religious freedom. Dan is currently living with his husband in Berlin. We are so glad you could join us.
Thrilled to be here.
Linda Robertson is the evangelical woman whose son Ryan was also featured in the film. They live in Washington State. Thank you, Linda, for being with us.
Thanks. I'm honored to be here.
Victor Baez Fibo is from a Catholic Puerto Rican family and lives in Orlando. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So we're going to start off with a question for Dan, and I'm wondering, I'm hoping that our viewers would like to know what prompted you to make the film.
Okay, yeah. So this film, For They Know Not What They Do, is really a kind of a follow-up to my first film, which was called For the Bible Tells Me So, as you just said. For the Bible, super proud of the movie. It's had a great life. It's still going around the world. It's in 24 languages now. Didn't think I'd revisit this topic. Honestly, there are a lot of things I care about, and felt proud of what we did for the Bible. But in 2014, my husband and I moved to Berlin for his job, and kind of lost touch a bit with what was going on in the US. But in August of 2015, I started getting strange kind of death threat type messages through the For the Bible Tells Me So website. People were threatening me again through that website. That happened a lot when that first film first came out, but it hadn't happened in many, many years. So it was just very strange to be threatened. And I thought, I said to my husband, well, if people are threatening me for a film that's 8 years old at that point, what's happening in school playgrounds and in colleges and universities to LGBTQ people who are much more vulnerable than I am? And what's changing in America? What's happened in just this little time since we've been gone? Marriage equality had happened just 2 months before that. So, the gay community, the people that I knew in the gay community were all sort of euphoric about that, including myself, for really good reason. But the fact remained that I was getting these threatening messages. So we started tuning into what was going on politically in the US. And that was during the point when there were probably 9 or 10 candidates for the Republican presidential nomination, the current president being one of them. And there was a debate very soon after I started getting these threats. So we watched a debate. And this debate had all 10 of these candidates lined up, I think, in front of a plane, I think. Anyway, 8 out of 10 of these candidates said something boldly and proudly anti-gay or anti-trans, which was a huge surprise to me, because when we had left the US, I would have thought, maybe the fringe candidates like Huckabee and maybe one other would really invoke the Bible in a debate and, say all these nasty things about our community. But 8 out of 10 of them were saying these things. And that was disturbing to me. So I started looking at what was going on state by state. And that's when I realized there were at that point, 200 anti-gay and anti-trans bills going through state houses in America. And the people that I knew, the friends of mine who were LGBTQIA+, most of them had no idea. No one was paying attention because everyone felt so wonderfully seen now that we could have marriage, that the right clearly was doing something that was not going to be good for our rights. So I just started really looking at that again. And there were just a lot of things For the Bible Tells Me So that we hadn't been able to deal with, that we hadn't been able to touch on. There were no trans stories in that film because it was a film of its time. It premiered at Sundance in 2007, and we did as best we could in that point, but it really felt like that was a big hole in the conversation now, particularly since conservative Christians have really taken on trans people and really taken on the othering of them, which has bothered me for quite some time. We also didn't touch on conversion therapy. I wanted to say something about this religious freedom movement. We didn't have a Catholic Latinx story, which was something that was important to me. So once I really started looking at what still needed to be said, we decided to move ahead and make the film.
Great, thank you. And Linda and Vico, I'm wondering from your perspective, Linda, if maybe you could go first. Why did you agree to have your story told?
Well, I think in the years after our son's death, we were increasingly aware of our own complicity, Jen, in what happened to Ryan. But also increasingly, we were always mindful that we were doing what we had been taught, and we were doing it out of what we thought was love for Ryan. We thought we were acting out of an instinct of protection for him. And as the years went on and we were processing our grief and processing our own regrets and grief and remorse, we started to feel more and more like we've got to somehow reach parents like us, the parents that are still thinking they're doing the loving thing, but they have no idea how high the stakes are. And so that had been, in our minds and our prayers and our discussions with our family. And then we heard about Dan and Dan wanting to meet us, and we watched his other films, but also knew that our story is highly personal, and that it would have it wasn't at all a slam dunk that we would do it. We had to know that we were really going to trust the filmmaker to handle our story with an incredible sense, a sensitivity, and also we wanted someone that wasn't going to demonize the right, because Rob and I feel like when we demonize the right and we tell them they're terrible, we keep them in their corners. We need to have a more nuanced conversation so that we can move them towards change, because humans don't change by being told they're terrible. And, the polarized conversations don't really move anybody. But Dan was committed to doing the kind of film that would provoke nuanced conversations and that would even show compassion, even though for Rob and I, it's hard to have compassion for ourselves. Dan was committed to that.
Great, thank you. And Vico?
For me, it was difficult because in Orlando, in 2016, it was flooded by journalists, the media, and a lot of people just they were just being horrible and preying on poll survivors, and that was my story, and it was very personal. I didn't feel comfortable. At that time, I would even have people text me. I never gave my phone number, and it was journalists. I would have people reach out on social media. It was very overwhelming. I got off social media platforms for a good while just to take care of my mental health. And then there's this woman who helped me. Her name is Robin Maynard, and she knows Dan, and she told me about his work, and we connected, and we met, and I just felt like I could trust him from the moment I met him. He brought his other film, and our conversation wasn't just like, tell me about what happened. He didn't even ask. He was like, who are you? What's your family? How were you raised? What are your beliefs? What do you like to do? So it was more like not taking something that happened to me and just milking it or just sensationalizing it. It was genuine interest. And he at one point said, and this is what got me, was if you at any point say something that you do not want for it to be included, or it's too personal, or you just, after it comes out, you don't feel comfortable, just let me know. And I guarantee you, I promise that will not make the film.
Mm-hmm.
And to hear somebody in his position promise you that even if you say something that's just very personal and deep, that could, for a filmmaker, that could be a golden moment or whatever you want to call it. And to have somebody like him say, I won't include it because I care about you, I just knew that it was the right thing to do.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm wondering, I'm going to change up my own order a little bit. I'm wondering, this is a question for all of you. How you think religion can be a force for good and not evil related to gay rights? And if you could give an example from your own life of something that's occurred recently that relates to this, that would be great.
I'm happy to start because I'm gonna actually point to something that is in the film. What Rob and Linda did with their life group in their house was something that obviously we shot for the film, but really altered me. It made me again remember the power, the positive power of faith and shared faith, and how sort of, we talk a lot about unconditional love, but what was also in that room was unconditional faith, right? And that's hard to find often, at least in Christianity in America at this point. There are many, many, many wonderfully affirming and welcoming churches, and there are also many, many, many places where LGBTQ people and those who love and support them are not welcome. But that, I just can't express how that evening, I just found it so to the core of what this message is in the Bible from this person called Jesus. You know, whether our film is really for everyone, whether you love Jesus as the Son of God, or you believe he was simply a rabbi at the time, or if you think Jesus was a myth. The reality is that Jesus was all about this unconditional embrace of all and the rejection of the other. And boy, did I see it that night in that room. It was, even though we had a crew there and we were filming, they just went ahead, and there was no way that wasn't going to be in the movie, as long as it was okay with Linda and Rob, because what an amazing journey they had, and what they were bringing to these people who were in the room, who were mostly all LGBTQ, was so beautiful and so powerful and simple and non-judgmental. So that's my answer.
Great. Vico and Linda?
Well, I'm glad Dan went first. It gave me a time to choose. I have so many examples. So even though my faith and what it looks like has changed dramatically, Jen, we are still a part of a large mega church in the Seattle area. And we're there because they're having the discussion there, and people view LGBTQ rights and inclusion differently there, but they're changing and they're moving. And so Rob and I are there intentionally to be part of that discussion. But one of the things, gosh, there's so many, but one of the things I see is that those of us that kind of identify as progressive Christians or Christian, and I think I think a lot of mainline Protestants in the United States have gotten this all along. Evangelicals have been very slow to embrace social justice issues. But now there's this huge burgeoning group of kind of ex-evangelicals who are moving into this joining this progressive Christian movement. And in doing so, we have the opportunity to speak to people that are where we used to be in a way that other people can't. And for example, Last weekend, I was part of a panel of parents who, in a virtual conference, that spoke to about 100 parents whose kids had just come out to them. And because those parents are mostly still in many of them in small towns in rural America, they go to evangelical churches, but we can speak their language. We've been where they are. And so for us to have empathy on them as they walk through this journey, we can do it in a way that people from it would be too painful for their kids to answer their questions and their kids to help them process their grief. But those of us, like, we had the opportunity to walk alongside them, encourage them. I had the opportunity, and one of the questions I got was, what do you wish you had said to Ryan when he came out? And I think that as more and more Christians wake up to the truth that God is actually love for everyone, that the divine is love, I think that movement of love can be very powerful.
Thank you. Vico?
For me, it's simple. I say it in the film. Whenever I think of religion, I think of one person, and that's my grandma. And I've never met such a strict Catholic as her. She would go to church Wednesdays, Sundays. She would spend the rest of her week going to visit the ill and pray for them and take care of them. Like, the greatest woman I've ever met. And you see how in the film there's that change from kicking me out, and then towards the end how the film portrays it in a very light manner and almost funny because of how drastic the changes of her watching Drag Race with me and just loving my friends and being so welcoming to the members of our community. That to me goes to show how her faith transformed without it changing her love for Christ and her religion. I would go to mass with her and she would introduce me to everybody, priest, you name it. And she would tell everyone, this is my grandson, he is a child of God, and God loves him as he is. And don't you dare cross this line, because there's this perfect middle ground where religion and homosexuality, trans, everybody that's part of our community, and acceptance and tolerance, there's a perfect point where they meet and coexist without having to, like Sarah said, use religion as a sword instead of a shield.
Yeah, I'm wondering, when I watched the film, the thing that occurred to me as a follow-up for you is how and why did your grandmother change? Like, I remember, you saying about her kicking you out, and then at the end, you see a picture of her and that she's come to sort of love you and appreciate it. What happened during that time?
There was distance. There was never disrespect. I never went through a phase of anger to where, like, I never had anything nasty come out of my mouth or disrespect to her, and she never disrespected me. Her actions were based merely on what she thought was correct. And that distance and time of not speaking, I mean, she didn't want to tell her other grandchildren, but I was her favorite. So imagine months went by without having a single exchange. And then one day she came to the US to visit my mom, and I was home, and I'm getting chills. She literally just looks at me and starts crying, and she says, "I'm sorry," and gives me a hug and a kiss. And to me, there was no need to have like a in-depth conversation, because sometimes it's like revisiting trauma. As long like that, I felt that in my heart, like her face when she saw me and how emotional she got, and just that simple "I am sorry" was the conversation that I needed.
Great, thank you. Dan, with a president in the White House who shows blatant disregard for the LGBT community and has such influence with evangelicals, um, you sort of alluded to it before, but I'm wondering how far this country has actually come in changing the minds and hearts of that group.
Well, I think, as Linda said, it's in progress. I think that in a lot of ways, the community has gone backwards as far as, rights. We don't have to enumerate all the terrible things this administration has done and are saying they will continue to do, judging from the Republican platform and all of that. But I will also say that stories continue, stories like Linda's and like Vico's and many others continue to get told, and people continue to come out. Nothing is more political than someone coming out to the people that they love and changing the conversation from something political to something human. And happily, there are still examples of LGBTQ people, positive examples in the media and television and movies, and more people are coming out, younger and younger, and that is what changes the world. Our films also have an effect. If this is a film that you enjoyed or you found to be powerful, please share it. The film has just become widely available now on DVD, and it's on iTunes and Amazon Prime. I've been completely shocked and thrilled at how far and wide For the Bible Tells Me So has gotten out, and the tens of thousands of emails I've gotten from people who felt differently and then watched simple stories about family. These are movies about family, what it means to be family, what it means to have faith, and what it means to be family. And people make mistakes. People start one down one road, then go down another. We're all human. But I continue to think, and maybe it's because I'm a filmmaker, that storytelling and human stories is also what can really change someone. You can't really change someone's mind unless you go through their heart. At least that's my opinion. I've seen plenty of films that are powerful and give me a lot of statistics, but if I'm not moved, my mind doesn't always change or grow. So really, the more people can come out and the more people can sort of tell people about these tools that we have. There are wonderful books now about religion and faith from many different religious traditions. So the conversation continues. There are a lot of Christians who are threatened by this conversation, because I think it represents kind of a shaking of their foundation. This is a very foundational belief in much of Christianity, and if we got that wrong, what else might be wrong? So we have to be patient, and we have to always come at it as hard as it is with love. And again, that's what's so powerful about Linda and Rob. I mean, there's a lot that's powerful about Linda and Rob, but they always come from love, even with the people that are the most difficult to deal with now, who believe what she said, who believe what they used to believe. And the work that they're doing in their church is some of the most powerful work being done today. So I have a lot of hope that we will continue to move in the right direction.
So, Dan, thanks for giving me my segue for Linda. So, Linda, I know you touched on it before, but I'd love to hear a little bit more about the work that you're doing. One of the things that occurred to me last night when I was thinking about it was also it's fine for the LGBTQ community to see this, but the evangelicals need to see this and need to hear about it. And I know you're doing some great work within your community. I'm wondering how you've been able to sort of move the ministers or move some of that group, and if you could just share a little bit about that with us.
Well, let's see. When we started attending our church in the year after Ryan's death, And when we did, we were sharing our story. We didn't totally get it yet. We were still processing. We didn't get all our mistakes. Our theology hadn't completely changed. All we knew is like, love is the answer. What we did didn't work. It's got to be about love. And I think as we were going through our process and we were reading books about how to read the Bible differently, how to see this differently, how to consider different viewpoints, we were sharing those with our pastors, inviting them to conferences, and they went. And they've kind of gone on this journey with us. And so
were they hesitant to do it? I'm sorry to interrupt you, but were they hesitant?
No. Yeah. Initially, I think they were hesitant, but they went with open, teachable, humble spirits. And I'm remembering one conference where we were, it was a gay Christian conference in Portland. We invited a group of our pastors. Several of them came, and they went with a theology that said that God would not bless same-sex marriages. And after the conference, several of them came to us privately and said, okay, all right, that did it. We're there now. We can view this differently. After seeing, over like 1,000 gay LGBTQ Christians worshiping God, hearing, going to workshops on theology, seeing, oh, you can still be a Christian and view this differently. It's not mutually exclusive. So, and then I feel like, well, they've just been great. Like on their website, they've got a whole bunch of small groups posted, and our small group is listed as Affirming Hope and a group for LGBTQ plus Christians. And people come to Rob and I that way all the time. And it's boldly listed on the website. The churches, a lot of people, they've had significant numbers of people leave the church over this and say, why do you do this? Why are you supporting them? Why are you condoning this? They've stood their ground. And even though not everybody in the church agrees, but I think for me, that's kind of a picture of America. And if we could do that work where we could say, we don't all have to agree, but we're going to stack hands on love and dignity and respect. And we're going to have the back of every single member of the human race and every single member of our church family and our chosen families and our biological families. We're going to have their back as we discuss this. And we could speak with more nuance and love. I feel like that's got to be the way forward. Dan knows that Rob and I went to a therapist 48 hours after Ryan came out to us. And I hadn't slept. Because of my fear that had just been taught to me my entire life, and Rob's fear that Ryan's soul was going to be in danger, we were just sick in every way. We went to this therapist. We had the typical intake session. After 45 minutes, the therapist looked at us, took a deep breath, and said, Ryan was born gay. Ryan is gay. Ryan will always be gay. Ryan doesn't have a problem. You do. Now, was the therapist right? Absolutely, she was right. Was she helpful? No. What she tried to do was to get us from A to Z in a 45-minute session, and it sent us back the other way. We ran to conservative circles. We ran to focus on the family. And I remember leaving the therapist's office, and Rob and I said, we thought she was a Christian. And we told our pastor, you sent us to the wrong person. She's not a Christian. And we closed our ears to that. And I think it could have been very different if she had walked alongside us and helped us understand our fear and earned our trust and helped us to see that our fear was just taking over our frontal cortex. And yeah, I think we would have made the same horrific mistakes possibly. So that's what we're trying to do in this work, is to walk alongside people so that they can make those progressive changes, incremental changes, even if they're slow. to help them see.
Yeah. Yeah. And the patience that it takes to
Yeah.
do that. Yeah.
Not to say, Jen, that anybody in the community should have to do that work. I mean, that's where Rob and I, as allies and other people like us, need to really step up and do that work because it's often too toxic, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's amazing work that you're doing. I'm just wondering, just changing tacks a little bit. Vico, what are you up to these days in life and whatever you're doing?
Well, I have a great job. I've been blessed enough to be able to work through the pandemic, work in the front lines, which has been super stressful. I've worked in laboratories. We developed testing methods to detect COVID. We've done a lot of research. And then I moved on now to emergency room setting. I'm supervising there. I'm currently babysitting. I have my niece and nephew in my room watching watching cartoons, eating donuts while I do this. Spending a lot of time with my mom. Me and my mom have just we've always been close, but since my grandmother's passing, we've just gotten like even closer. I love my chosen family. I get together with them whenever I get a chance. I perform every now and then. I do drag. I picked that up as a hobby. I gotta say it before Daniel slips in the comment here or in the green room. It's been a great outlet. It's well received. It's therapeutic for me, and
he's amazing. Amazing. That's all I'll say.
And I don't know. And I've recently joined a nonprofit organization called Impulse Orlando. We do work within the gay community for mental health, STI prevention, treatment, counseling, drug addiction. So, and it's great. There's a lot of chapters throughout the US and even in other places in the world like India and Brazil. And I find a lot of joy in doing that. That's something I had been dying to do something in the community that made me feel like I was being productive and giving back. And doing this, we see great results. We help people with, and we connect them with resources and here in Orlando, and it's been great.
Great. Well, that's another, it's a great wrap up that you've done. We just have another minute or so, and I'd love to hear from Dan and Linda, any sort of hope that you have or thing that you're wishing for, either from this film, from your religious life, anything related that you could just, in 30 seconds or so share with us.
Dan?
Yeah, my hope is just always that more understanding and more love is spread around everywhere. And that's the reason we made our film. It's why I fell in love with the two people I'm sharing this call with and everybody else in the movie. As I mentioned, the movie just became available more widely. So if people can talk about it, it's very hard to get eyes on films right now. Who aren't on Netflix. Netflix only buys films that they make, unfortunately, now. So please look for it. Tell people about it because I think it can save a lot of lives.
Yes.
Great. Linda?
I think the thing that I try to remember, Jen, when I'm really discouraged about the state of the United States, and yeah, obviously the current administration, is that we've had this huge swell and response of people of faith that do really stand for love and really do believe in a God that loves every single human being on the earth, have risen up to come back. And I think that we're all seeing the urgency of speaking out and becoming active. And I'm just seeing like this. I've never seen anything like it. And I've never seen in racial justice, in LGBTQ rights, of people that a privilege like myself, like cisgender, heterosexual, white, middle class and upper middle class people educating themselves, listening, figuring out what we can do. And not to say that it's enough. It's never going to be enough, but at least it's a start. And that feels hopeful to me. So I'm trying to focus on hope. Got to focus on hope to get through the next 30 days.
Yeah. Touche. Well, I just want to thank you all so much for joining us. I was incredibly moved by the film. I used I don't know how many Kleenex, and even today I've been incredibly moved by all of you, your stories, your honesty, your willingness to put yourself out there to help change the world. And as you said, Linda, maybe it's step by step or hour by hour, even if you'd like it faster. But I feel blessed today to be with you, and I know that people watching this will also get a lot out of it. So I can't thank you enough for what you're doing. And really, if you're any indication, you three, then we're going to be in good shape. So we have to keep the hope alive also. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Jen. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Jen.